continues, he says, however, if the parents, guardians desire their young to adopt a better lifestyle, change from a licentious to a disciplined way of living, they must possess and live those values themselves, must set the example of living the higher values of life and refrain from giving sermons to their wards. But the general trend the world over is quite the contrary. The parents do not set the example of a disciplined life and keep ordering their children to be disciplined. Therein lies a double fault. It can never work that way. The famed German scientist Albert Einstein observes, setting an example is not the main means of influencing others, it is the only means. So this is the solution to the problem, as it were. Whichever way you want the child to grow up, the strong rule of thumb is live it and say nothing. Now, when we say nothing, obviously it's taken within context. But what's interesting is that when you don't sermonize, when you don't tell, but live it, there will be a much greater tendency for the child, for anyone in the environment, to ask. If you, again, put yourself in the position of the child or even an adult who is in this position. If you know someone who constantly harangues you, is constantly telling you things, the tendency to ask that person something drops down to zero. Even if you know that person knows it and you want their opinion because you know they're relatively well versed in that particular subject, the tendency to ask will drop down to zero because you don't want to have to deal with that. If you know someone who is very well versed in a subject and very rarely has never really spoken on it, then you feel much more curious about what they know. And when, as we're talking about, when there is that seeding of positive emotion, there's an openness there. When that's there, then the child will naturally gravitate and ask. So this is the method that he's talking about here. Live the values yourself. Children learn, obviously, by seeing what is being performed, and they continue to express those values. This is an idea that it's not an uncommon idea. It's directly expressed in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, whatever the superior person does, that the others will follow. Whatever standard that person sets, that's the standard that others reach for. So it doesn't matter, where that standard is set by the superior person. That's what others will attain towards. That's the example that they will follow, irrespective of what he says. Do as I say, don't do as I do. It doesn't work. You look at the stats. If you grew up in a household where parents smoked, you are far more likely to be a smoker. All the while continuing to get messages from the external environment how bad smoking is. Doesn't matter. That person, whether they like the parent or dislike the parent, is irrelevant. It's still a leader. It's still an example setter. And so you will continue to function in that way because that's the natural relationship that has been set up. So, what do you want your child to be? No, what do you want to be? Who do you want to be? What values do you believe are important? Live them. And that's why it's really important, if we're going to be a parent, that we implement a course of self-development in our lives. We should always be looking to be getting better and better and better as human beings because we are constantly under the watchful gaze of a child who is learning from our behaviour. And our behaviour is never going to be perfect. No one's expecting anyone to be perfect. But what we should do is strive to be better. And then the child will also move in that direction. and don't say anything. And even when, the fundamental principle of education is that knowledge is taken, not given. You can't give information to someone. It's not possible. But they can take it from you. And so this is why he says, don't sermonize, don't give advice. When someone wants advice, they'll come. Even then, I've heard him say a number of times, even then, you've spent 12 years keeping quiet, just living the values. Then finally, the child comes and says, Mum, what should I do about this problem in my life? 12 years of frustration comes out in a moment. Overload the child with knowledge, no. Give a little bit. Wait for it to be digested, thought about. You know what the answer is. Give 50% of the answer. It's like the old adage of being a performer. Always leave them wanting more. Never make the audience completely satisfied. Always make them want to come back for the next act. Same sort of thing. Give them enough knowledge that stimulates that thinking and moving in that direction, and leaves the door open for the next question. So, you were right all along. It was your parents' fault.